Well, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar on how to either start, create, or even make better your short-term fostering programs. My name is Elizabeth Bennett and I'm a member of the Best Friends Network team. Before I introduce our panelists, a few housekeeping items, please. This is a Teams live webinar, which means that all of your microphones will be muted for the entirety of the discussion. So there's no need to worry about accidentally taking yourself off mute. We do hope, however, that you'll use the chat box, the question box at the very right of your screen to ask questions while the panelists are speaking. So we're going to pause a few times throughout the discussion to answer your questions. Please note that the first time you type a question, you will need to enter your first name in the designated field unless you'd like your question to be anonymous. We are recording this webinar, so you'll receive the video recording, some additional resources about short-term fostering, and responses to any pre-submitted questions that we don't get to today after the webinar concludes. So please be sure to share those with your colleagues. So now let's meet your panelists. Nikki Harris is the Chief Operating Officer for Jacksonville Humane Society. Danielle Rutherford is the Cat Shelter Supervisor for Memphis Animal Services. Carina Haro is the Foster Program Coordinator at Best Friends Animal Society in Los Angeles. And McCloud is your moderator today. She is the Lifesaving Programs Support Lead at Best Friends Animal Center in Salt Lake City. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Megan, to get us started talking about short-term fostering.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this webinar. I hope we learn a lot about short-term fostering. First question will be to everyone. Why did you decide to try short-term fostering?
All right, I can get started. This is Dani with Memphis Animal Services in Memphis. We just launched a pilot dog foster program back in December and had never had just a general dog foster program before at our shelter. So to kind of get started, we decided a weekend sleepover event might be a good way to recruit some new foster homes, get our program out to the public so they could see the benefits and see how much fun it was. So we did our first event kind of as a theme. We did Valentine's Day sleepovers. So we definitely decided to try it to kind of advertise our new program out to the public, and obviously for the benefits of short-term fostering for our dogs here.
That sounds awesome. A Valentine's Day sleepover is really fun. Did you find that that was a good way to start recruiting?
Absolutely. I think having a theme really got a buy-in from the public that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten. It was a lot easier to get media buy-in as well because everyone was excited about the theme and how cutesy it was and the idea of taking a dog home as your Valentine. So I think the theme really helped out in how successful it was for us.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to talk about how they started their short-term fostering?
This is Nikki from Jacksonville Humane Society. We started Silent Night, which is obviously related to the holidays, just to get our dogs and cats out of our shelter. We previously to building our new building, our property and buildings, we had a terrible fire, and so we just didn't feel like during that time of year the dogs having to live outside. And yes, it is Florida, but they're not used to living outside in the cold, and so we thought that was a great way to get them out, and then also having fewer animals to take care of on the holidays is a great way to help the staff as well.
Yeah, those Home for the Holidays are definitely a very popular short-term fostering that we see throughout animal welfare, I feel like. How was your first time doing that?
I was not here because the first time they did it was in 2012, but it was very successful. We did a press release. We do a press release for it every year. And the public responds. We do similar things for hurricanes, and we call them stormtroopers, but it's the same concept.
That's so cute.
That's so cute. Awesome. Well, Here at SLC, we also have done a lot of short-term fostering, and we also kind of decided to do short-term fostering for the recruitment side of it because we found a lot of people were very interested in fostering, but kind of, nervous about what that really entailed. I feel like a lot of people are very apprehensive to fostering at first because of the time commitment. So do you find that these short-term fostering really opens the door for people to kind of open their heart and learn more about fostering?
Yeah, I mean, on our end, absolutely, and adoption as well. We were very open to people who participated in our, that introductory sleepover event to say, if you've been on the fence about fostering or adopting, please come try it out. Come take home a sleepover dog. So we ended up recruiting a lot of longer-term fosters out of it as well.
I feel like we've gotten a similar response here in Salt Lake City. The more kind of open foster concept of there's no time commitment and you can just try this and see what it's like has actually resulted in quite a few of those foster fails and also really long-term fosters as well. So that's always a good side for recruitment. Does anybody else want to share about how they decided to start short-term fostering?
Yeah, this is Carina from Best Friends Los Angeles. We've actually just revamped our canine foster program or short-term fostering. We found that a lot of dogs were just kind of sitting here for a while with no in-home notes. So really putting a program out there that gave the people opportunity to just take them for a short term really helped in getting those long-term dogs out. Our short-term fostering is super short-term, like they do have the option of taking them for the day, a few hours for a sleepover or longer. So I think that's really helped. And similar to every other program, it kind of brings in more people when they don't have that commitment.
That's awesome. Don't you call your sleepovers slumber buddies?
Correct.
Oh, that's one of my favorite terms. I think it's so cute. Have you found that, it helps on the other side with adoptions with these short-term fostering? Like you were saying, there wasn't a lot of notes on these dogs. They didn't have in-home notes to kind of tell adopters a little bit about them. How did short-term fostering help with those types of adoption inquiries?
Yeah, we were actually surprised to learn a lot about the animals, just getting out of this environment. We often see the dogs suffer from, kennel anxiety and kennel issues that when you remove them, even for a few hours out of this environment, we weren't no longer seeing those. So it really helped getting those notes. And yes, it did bring a lot more adoptions out because of it.
That's wonderful. I love hearing how when a dog is in a shelter and, maybe seen as a certain way, or a cat, and then they go to a foster home and it's a completely different side of the animal we never would have thought was possible. I know we've definitely had some short-term foster fails that have resulted in dogs going into homes we didn't think they would do well in initially.
This is Nikki from Jacksonville Humane. I also think that the short-term fosters do a great thing because one of our main questions from adopters is how do they do with other animals? Because so many people already have pets. And so that gives us that information in a very short period of time, which is something that we can't recreate here at the shelter.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Do you guys require meet and greets prior to going to these short-term foster homes, or do you counsel on how to do it for them?
We counsel. Yeah, we counsel people how to do it, but we don't require that.
Awesome. How does that look for other programs? Is there a lot of meet and greets prior to short-term fostering, or is it more of a counseling for you in LA, Carina?
It's counseling, but we also highly recommend introductions to resident animals because they might act a certain way here and we might see certain interactions here, and once they get into the home they're completely different. So to play it safe, we always highly recommend that they come in with their resident animals.
Awesome. Well, does anyone else have any input on what kind of caused them to start short-term fostering? Well, I think we can go to our next question then, which kind of ties in. After your organization decided to launch a program, how long did it take to implement?
This is Danny in Memphis. So we kind of made the we had wanted to do a sleepover event, but we kind of didn't think about what it was going to be until the idea of Valentine's Day came along. So we ended up pulling it together in just a few weeks. We already had an existing foster agreement, but we tailored our some of our take-home documents around marketing your foster pet and things like that. We pulled that together pretty quickly, just with enough time to, like I said, get it out to media and start advertising on social media as well.
And did you have to change your application process for short-term fostering, or did you keep it the same for your general fosters?
We kept ours the same for our general fosters.
Okay. After deciding to launch the program, what were some of the steps that happened that you didn't really see coming, or things that were easier than you initially thought?
This is Nikki from Jacksonville Humane. We're always very impressed by how responsive our community is, and the silent nights were no different. We had lines out the door of people waiting to take home an animal for the holidays. So that's always really nice to see your community respond that way.
That's amazing. Do you ever get any responses of the ham from Christmas going missing?
No.
I know we've had that happen over here for Thanksgiving. I think a lot of that as well is the initial, like, these people are taking dogs and cats home for, a very short amount of time. So was there kind of some caution before that? Was it like, we don't really know what's going to happen since they're only committing to these animals for 48 hours or less?
I don't think so. I think people really liked having a beginning and ending date. And like someone had mentioned earlier, that the short term is very appealing to people. But I think even more than like a sleepover, which is also short term, I think that when there's clear beginning and ending dates, I think a lot of people that would never even try any of it are more willing because they know that there's an end date. So if it's not going well, they know that there's a day that they get to bring the animal back.
I completely agree with that. In Memphis, we have several transport partners, and so oftentimes we'll recruit foster homes for those pets that we know are going to be transported to another organization. So those transport fosters having that day where they know that their transport foster pet is coming back seems to be really appealing as well, just like you said, having that hard start and hard end date.
That's interesting. For events types like that, like transports, or say, like home for the holidays for Thanksgiving and then returning on Black Friday, what are some of the things and steps that you did to have a smooth return process from foster when sending this many animals to foster for short term?
We were really explicit, like with details. So in some of our, not only did we do the Valentine's sleepover event, we also did a summer camp one where we gave people the option of keeping the pets for a weekend or a full week. So we had just a simple form that we made up ahead of time that went with everyone's packets, where they signed up for a time slot to return their foster pet. But then they always had the option of contacting us, being open in communications if that wasn't going to work, or if they changed their mind and wanted to adopt, or if they wanted to continue fostering, but just having it very spelled out and organized ahead of time so that they could sign up and know what they were getting into, as opposed to, we'll get back to you guys later with a time and day or something like that. Just on the front end, being very clear with your expectations of them.
Yeah, a handout sounds like that would be really nice to have for each foster. Do you also have like a foster phone that is operated like 24/7? Is it just during the day? Or what was the support like for short-term fosters?
So we do not have a foster phone, unfortunately, but we do have clear instructions on, especially for medical emergencies and things like that, that they're sent home with in their foster packet, on who to contact, where to go in case of emergency, and then all other hours, during business hours, they can contact us by phone or email.
And when sending this many animals to short-term fosters, did you find an increase in like any incidents, or did you find that it was about the same as sending animals to a normal foster?
In Jacksonville, I think it's probably even fewer than regular foster.
That's awesome. I feel like we've had a pretty similar response here at SLC. We recently did a Clear the Nursery for our kittens here at our kitten nursery in SLC, where we allowed people to come and learn how to foster and take kittens home for as long as they really want. It could be a week, it could be less. And we were very shocked to see like that we received less, I think, inquiries than we had in the past when sending out even more animals. How is that? I know, Carina, you also have done some Clear the Nursery and short-term fostering for cats as well. How does that look like in LA?
Yeah, I mean, we're really high volume here in Los Angeles, so we try to get as many animals out as much as possible. But everybody goes through the same process. They have to take our orientation, our online orientation, and then they get onboarded for foster. So, I mean, with that, we're very open. We give them the opportunity to do short-term, long-term sleep, all of that. But with kittens, it's a little bit different because they are neonatal and they do need that round-the-clock care. So it just depends on what the person is looking for. We kind of give them whatever they're looking for as far as foster. So if they're just looking for, a short term, then we try to give them older kittens and stuff like that. We hardly ever give them something like a bottle baby if they could only foster for 2 weeks.
That makes sense.
This is Nikki in Jacksonville. We had really good luck this year with kittens, with recruiting prior to kitten season, with recruiting a resource of people that just wanted to take bottle babies for one night. So, because we always have those end of the day bottle babies. And so we had a lot of people that were like, I can't feed overnight for 2 to 4 weeks, but I can do it for one night. And so at least that would give us the whole next day to find a long-term foster for that kitten, but that kitten had somewhere to go for the night. And so we had a group of people that we trained and had a list of people that when we had those late days, when we needed emergency fosters, we had those ready to go.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
That's what we did in Memphis too. And we called them our kitten first responders. So
we did too.
So cute.
We asked people to commit to 48 hours if they could, because same thing, we're municipal open intake. So we often get those 3:55 p.m., tiny neonates in. And so we had people who had signed up with, I can do the weekends, I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday, or I work from home, but can't possibly do this for 3 weeks straight. So we had a ton of success this year with doing that. And oftentimes they end up linking up. So we have a social media community, a Facebook group. And a lot of times if I can keep on Friday and Saturday night and you can pick up Sunday, Monday, then maybe we can meet up and find a middle of the weeker and kind of group raise these babies until they're big enough and stable enough to go to a foster on their own. So yeah, we had a ton of success with that as well.
That's
we do the
awesome.
same thing with Facebook. And even like fosters going on vacation, can somebody take my foster for 3 days? I have to go out of town and I'll pick them back up on Monday. And, they work that out and it doesn't even go through us.
Right.
That sounds really amazing for the community, because I know a lot of our fosters as well, when they are about to go on vacation, there is that hesitancy of like, I really want to get them back, or, maybe I don't want to go because I really want to keep them. So a Facebook group sounds like a great way to really help foster homes link up to be able to raise these kittens on from the get-go. We also have a lot of neonate bottle babies here in SLC that we allow fosters to take for a night, for a week. It's really whatever time that they can commit to. And we found that it really helps not only with our kitten nursery, but the weaning process as well, we have found is a lot smoother in a foster home versus in a kennel, of course. But for your Facebook, how is that managed through you guys? Is it only fosters that have been approved? Is it more open community? What does that look like?
Ours are approved fosters only. We invite them to join the group.
Yeah, ours as well.
Awesome. And then when there is that changing between foster homes, is that like something that you manage on your database, or is it something that they kind of just email you and let you know?
They email us and let us know, and then we will, of course, we change it in our software just so we know where the kitten is, just in case, you know, if something happens, we know who the people are walking in with that kitten.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Megan,
that's
we have a
They
question.
don't have to come in.
Go
Megan.
ahead, Elizabeth.
Yep, we have a question from Lindy. Do any of your states require home inspections? In Georgia, the Department of Ag requires a home inspection before that person can take an animal home. This makes it so much more difficult for me to justify spending the time to conduct a home visit for such a short foster period. Have any of you encountered this?
No, we don't do any home visits.
No.
No.
We don't in Salt Lake City either. That does sound like that could be a barrier to helping animals.
This is Nikki, I'd want to know, is that something that you can recruit and train volunteers to do, or does it have to be a staff member doing the inspection?
This is also a good question, I think, to post to the Best Friends Network Facebook group. I'm sure there'll be lots of folks in there with experience.
Definitely.
And maybe the Best Friends attorneys could look at that law and see if it's real.
Yes. Okay, well, I think that kind of leads into our next question. What did the process look like in terms of internal communication to staff, volunteers, and existing fosters, and also external marketing to potential fosters?
Typically, this is Danny in Memphis. We, if we're planning an event like this, and I'm speaking like our sleepover events that we did, we definitely let all departments know ahead of time. Give our clinic a heads up that there will be more, pets going out to foster. So there will probably be some questions from foster care regarding medical. Let's see, volunteers. We recruited ahead of time a lot of help for same day, sending pets out to foster, helping put together take-home bags, helping them load their car with a kennel, helping them meet dogs, do meet and greets, things like that. We relied pretty heavily on volunteers to assist with that, and talking to new fosters. And external marketing to potential fosters, we did a media release and posted on those existing Facebook groups and Facebook events and things like that, just asking people to come out and join us.
And were the amount of people that came to these type of events like pretty overwhelming? Did you get a lot of responses, or was it something that kind of built over time?
The first of it kind of blew me out of the water. We ended up sending 37 dogs out that day.
That's amazing.
We're open, from 12 to 7, so we had an incredible turnout. The second one that we did for summer camp, we sent home 19 dogs, so not as much, but that was a busier time of year. The first
summer, everyone's always going out of town.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that first one, we got an incredible response, so we were just enough prepared, I think.
You learn as you go when you don't really know what waters you're treading in. So Carina, how was it in LA when you started doing more of the slumber buddies compared to longer term fosters who were taking dogs for like 2+ weeks at a time, or cats for 2+ weeks at a time?
Yeah, with us here, I think we just got together with all the staff members who would be involved in the process of sending these animals out. The foster team is in charge of that, but we also got in contact with our cat department and the dog department to make sure that everyone is aware that there is going to be more animals sent out to foster. And the way that it works here in LA, we operate with a calendar. We're appointment based, so we get to put appointments up on the calendar. Fosters get to see it on their end, they get to sign up for it, and then we get those animals out for that day. So everybody has access to this, and they can see who's coming in and for what. That's a really neat database that we have. But I would say we also have weekly emails that we communicate our most urgent or our animals that need to get out the most on, and we send these to volunteers and to fosters. And then we also have our marketing team who does a lot of social media posts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and stuff like that. So it's like a group effort, but as long as everyone's working together, it gets done.
And did you find the change from going from a more traditional foster program where the animals are in foster for a longer period of time with more of a time commitment to, more of an open foster concept? Did you find some of the existing fosters and volunteers were nervous of the change or excited for the change?
I think a lot of people were excited. We had never done short term. Everything was like a 2 week or more. And a lot of people did not have that time on their hands. A lot of people work here. It is very busy in Los Angeles. So not everyone was able to foster like they would have. And so we saw a lot of volunteers actually turned into foster volunteers as well, because they were able to take these animals on such short term.
We've had a similar response here in SLC with volunteers kind of being more fosters with the short term as well. When they're like dog walking at 6 p.m. and they see a dog staying here overnight, some of them will be like, well, I guess I could take him home for the night, which is like a great experience and also lets us get to know the animal even more. One of my favorite experiences so far with short-term fostering has been to see animals in a variety of foster homes that are all short-term, because sometimes we have those fosters that, they're single, they don't have any animals, they don't have any kids, so we don't really get to learn a lot about what they're good with. But when they go into 3 different foster homes over the course of 2 weeks, we get to learn a lot more about how they are because of the different interactions that they've had in different foster homes, which has really helped a lot of our long-term animals get adopted. Have you guys had similar experiences in your shelters?
Yes, absolutely. We see that all the time here in Los Angeles.
This year, this is Nikki from Jacksonville. We also started doing Dogs Day Out, where we just let anybody can come in. They don't sign up for the foster program. They don't get added to our database, but anybody can show up from the community and take a dog out for the day.
That's awesome. What are some of the activities that they do typically, or do you have like recommended activities that they do?
Yeah, we give them a list of recommendations, and we give them our social media links and stuff, because we want them to post from the day out what the dog is doing, so that people can see the dog in, at the beach or at a dog-friendly restaurant. And so we give them some ideas. But a lot of the pictures that we get that are my favorite are the ones of them, they take them home and put them on their couch.
Oh, those are also my favorite. It's nice to see them finally relax in a quiet area where there's not a bunch of barking dogs.
Oh, yeah, the dogs are always passed out because it's finally quiet.
Yes. With Dog Day Out, are there specific things that they're not allowed to do, such as like going to the dog park, or is there any things that are restricted outside of, specific dogs that may not have skills in certain areas?
We do not want them to go to dog parks just because that's a lot for the dog and for the people. Even for new adopters, we recommend that they don't take their newly adopted dog to a dog park. So we have some things that we recommend that they do and don't do. And then we actually, right now, we're selecting the dogs that we think are appropriate for just anybody who walks in with little to no history to take those dogs.
And do you find that the social media that you get from these dog days out is more helpful to the dog finding or the dog finding their forever home versus, being in a kennel in your brick and mortar facility?
Absolutely. And also it gives us some information that we can add to the notes that show up online. And when future adopters come, we can say on their dog's day out, they did great at a restaurant, they rode in a car great, they loved the beach, different things like that, which is all information that we would never be able to get at the shelter.
How do you gather that information when they do come back from those outings?
We have a little form.
Nice.
And we tell them in advance that what we're looking for, and so they, people are paying attention, and so they also go out the door with a backpack that says, "I'm available for adoption."
That's so cute.
Yeah.
We do we call them foster field trips. We do those as well here in Memphis, and we've had similar success. We don't have the capacity yet to just have them open all of the time during our hours of operation. So we do them on the weekends. We have great volunteers who will lead those on the weekends, and we have a sign up that we post on our Facebook page each week, usually middle of the week, with how many slots we think we can handle for that weekend so that people can sign up and they meet here when we open. We also pre-select the dogs based on ones that we really think need the extra exposure or are very kennel stressed, so that we can try to get them more photos, more information, and things like that. We have that checkout form as well for getting the information afterward, and share with them a one-pager before they leave on do's and don'ts and our social media information, hashtags, and things like that.
That's awesome. About how many people do you think a week you get signed up on average?
We would have way more people if we had the capacity to send more out. We're working on that. It's usually people commenting on our Facebook page, "Oh man, I just missed the last slot to sign up." So we usually try to send 5 to 10 out per weekend, but hopefully more in the future.
That's still a great number.
Yeah, ours varies so much with the number of dogs that are available to go. And then, just during the week, it's pretty slow, but we also don't want them to be gone too long on the weekends because that's our highest adoption.
Right. Yeah.
Carina, do you have like a similar Dog's Day Out activity that you guys do? And if so, is it during the week only, available on the weekend? What does that look like?
So for volunteers, there's 2 different set of programs. So the Slumber Buddies, Adventure Buddies are for volunteers, and those are the ones that take them on sleepovers and stuff like that. For our fosters, the public who signed up to be a foster, they do more of outings and stuff like that. So that's how we advertise it. Nothing is like set.
Okay, so it's pretty like organic and flexible. It depends on what you have and the days.
Right.
Well, I guess this leads into our next question. What is a conversation, item, or audience you didn't anticipate needing but ended up being significant? I think one of the things that we have found significant in Salt Lake that we didn't really anticipate at first was some of our bottle baby foster kittens, similar to what you all are doing, of making that a little bit more short term and allowing people to get experience bottle feeding and also helping us with our overnighters. And that has really grown our base for people who are interested, want to learn more, and helping us manage our bottle baby population. And that wasn't something we originally had anticipated. Another thing that we didn't really anticipate was considering this short-term cat fostering option. I think a lot initially, the concern was, cats take longer to adjust in new environments comparatively to dogs. And we have found a lot of our cats end up being foster fails when we do these short-term fosterings, or we find that they do a lot better in a different environment we would have not realized if we wouldn't have done it. Have any of you had similar experiences in that regard?
For cats, we typically ask for 2 weeks. That's the shortest that we ask if it's an adult cat. Bottle kittens and kittens, any day counts.
Does anyone else have a kind of shorter term cat fostering program, or is it pretty similar to, at least take them for 2 weeks or more?
In LA, it's pretty similar.
And were there any conversations that happened with short-term fostering that you didn't really anticipate?
This is Nikki in Jacksonville. I think that what these programs do is it opens the door for additional programs to try. So, because Silent Night was so successful, then when we moved into Stormtroopers, it was, that was an easy thing to integrate into our operations because we had already done Silent Night. And then, you move into sleepovers and Dog's Day Out. Those successes, all building on each other, help when you go to introduce and get buy-in from the staff and volunteers. It really helps when you can say, look at how successful this was. It's not that much different. We're going to try this.
I definitely agree with you. I think there's a lot from, someone who doesn't really understand what fostering is or what it means, doesn't understand that there's a lot of programs out there that can make it as easy and flexible as possible for you to help an animal in need. And that's a conversation we continually run into where people are kind of blown away that they don't have to commit to a time and that, they have free time between Tuesday and Friday and can help an animal who would otherwise be in a kennel. And it really opens a lot of doors for not only the public, the animals, and the adopters, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Megan, we have a question going back to cats really quick. Brianna is asking, how often do you send cats to short-term foster? We've been hesitant to send cats to short-term, except when we have to around the holidays because of how stressed they get.
We kind of do it on an as-needed basis, and also cat by cat, we do select which cats we think would do well in a short-term foster. Obviously ones with behavioral struggles or ones that would need more time to warm up in a new environment, we have that conversation. But we really do take it kind of application by application and conversation by conversation. We try to keep it very open and see what happens naturally, and we have found that a lot of animals get positive outcomes when we take it that step by step. All right, I think we'll go to the next question. What were your expectations when you started the program, negative or positive, and were they met?
I think when we started with those themed events, definitely exceeded my expectations on how excited the public got and how much buy-in we had. We ended up with, let's see, I wrote down, we had 12, so we sent 37 to foster. We had 12 directly adopted when they returned them. We had 16 who ended up coming back to our shelter, and 2 of those, one of our rescue partners took out of the hands of the foster in our lobby after hearing how great they did. One of our rescue partners was like, we have to have them, absolutely. Then we had 9 who ended up asking to extend their foster, whether that was because they were still on the fence about adopting. Some of them wanted to keep them until adoption, which was great. So a couple of those ended up being picked up by some of our rescue partners as well, or being adopted from foster care. So we ended up having about half of what we sent out adopted by the short-term foster parents, which was really cool to see. And then the ones who did come back to the shelter were all adopted or went to some of our rescue partners within a short period of time, just like we already said, because of all the great information that we learned about them and all the photos that we got that we could market them with. So definitely exceeded my expectations as far as the great response we got. I definitely knew that what information we were going to get to have would help with those adoptions in the long run. So
That's
it's
amazing.
Fantastic for us, yeah.
One thing that we find whenever we do the shorter, like the holidays or stormtroopers, is that it helps us place a lot of our long-term pets that have been living at the shelter for a long time. They're probably living at the shelter because they're not doing well here. Or people like, I remember one was a feline leukemia FIV positive cat. That just scares people, but when you give them a short term to take home, they took him home, well, then they ended up finding him a home because he was so great, and that other stuff wasn't so scary when you see them outside of the shelter.
I would agree. I think a lot of the way, especially when an animal is in a shelter for so long, staff, volunteers, everyone around them kind of has this, lens on when they're looking at an animal, and sometimes all they need is a new perspective to help them find that home. And so giving them that short-term opportunity is really an advocate to kind of show a different side of the animal.
Yes, and we always let the short-term fosters keep those guys if they want to promote them and find them a home themselves.
Oh, social media, it works. I think from here in Salt Lake, when we really started, messing with the concept of short-term fostering and, looking at our foster program and ways to get more animals out, we started with a foster open house that was geared towards getting kittens out specifically. We put the events together in about a week, and we were expecting to send out, maybe 40 kittens. We ended up sending 89 out in the course of 4 hours. And it was kittens that, needed subcutaneous fluids, kittens that were on medications. Overall, we had some really easy independent kittens, but we also had some difficult bottle babies that were actually some getting tube fed, some that were getting syringe fed. And we found that the public really stepped up and really kind of blew us away in terms of what they were willing to handle when it came to fostering. And I think a lot of that was we were so used to helping everyone know exactly what next step was when we just needed to ask if the public would help us, and they came out and they really turned out. And so that helped us really start the process for our Clear the Kitten Nursery.
Yeah, I think in one of our Stormtrooper events, every single ringworm kitten went home.
That's amazing. That's really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things we're still struggling with over here in Salt Lake is the ringworm fosters, but we're definitely getting there. What about other locations? Have there been situations where you initially thought, this might be too hard for a foster? I don't know if this is something I could ask of them, and being blown away when fosters were able to step up and really help with animals or medical that you didn't think that they would be able to help with?
Yeah, we had a similar situation here in Los Angeles where we were doing Clear the Nursery, but we opened it up to the public, and we actually, I think we went Instagram Live or we went on the radio, and we basically said, come on down, you don't need to be a foster, anybody who can foster can come in, and we did it for our kittens, and we had so much people show up. People were excited. We actually ran out of kittens to send out with, that we went to the city shelter and we pulled more, and we had them go into the foster home. So people actually waited around for us to go to the city shelters, pull these animals, and bring them back here. So it is really neat to see that the community is really there for you if you do ask for it.
That's amazing. Saving more. Well, I want to make sure we have enough time for our last question so we can get to overall questions. So the last question is, were there any unexpected results from the short-term foster program that impacted other programs or organizational goals? I think some of the impacts that we had from short-term fostering and really opening our foster program here in Salt Lake was not only, getting more volunteers engaged, but also it really did impact some of our bigger organizational goals, because we found that it started with, let's look at bottle babies, let's look at our kittens who really need the most care right now, into dogs, and then into cats. So I think it started with one concept and went to a whole nother. So we were getting adoptions involved, volunteers involved, and foster homes, and it really impacted us as like a whole center here in Salt Lake. Did you guys find that, at least in, for your volunteers and for other staff members, that they were getting engaged in things they weren't necessarily before?
I think so, and just also on board, like seeing it be successful. There were a lot of hesitations of, how well is it going to go? How much support is this going to take? How are the dogs going to be when they return? Is it going to be successful? So I think just buy-in not only from the community, but also from our team here about how exciting it was that it was so successful, and seeing, because we did send out a lot of our long stay dogs, or dogs that have been struggling, especially with that first sleepover, and now when we do foster field trips, that's who we focus on. So seeing the direct impact of those, and when someone comes in and says, I saw the foster field trip for Sally and how great she did, and that's why I'm here to adopt. So seeing those direct impact things happening as a result of these type of events, I think has been really great for us.
Yeah, I would say between getting long-term animals out and just kind of seeing animals that we've had so many dogs here in Salt Lake where they came in from the municipal shelter, and we were told that they weren't good necessarily with other dogs, or that they struggled with separation anxiety, or they had whatever behavior issues. We would send them to these short-term foster homes, or they would end up adopting from the short-term foster home, and they would come back a month later with these stories that were just so great to hear, that the dog was so much better and not dealing with any of these issues, because a lot of it can come from kennel stress and just not knowing how to evaluate fairly when they're in a stressful environment such as a shelter. And so seeing how that impacted, confidence in adoption staff to be able to help counsel and really set adopters up for success, and foster coordinators to really do the same, it's really helped a lot of animals get, a second chance in ways that they wouldn't have before.
And I think, like I had mentioned before, it really gives confidence to the volunteers and the staff when they're doing adoptions, because they have so much more information on those animals. And it's just, some dogs and cats are night and day different when they're in a home. And when we can say that with confidence to a potential adopter, I think that really makes the volunteers and staff feel good.
I would agree. I think that really makes a world of difference when you're doing an adoption for an animal. I think we can probably open up to questions.
Sure. So we have 2 questions at the moment from Michelle in Texas. So the first one is, with weekday fostering, has anyone had any issues with anxiety in dogs if the fosters are gone or at work, or do you require weekday fosters to be on hand at all times?
We don't require that of adopters, so we wouldn't require that of fosters.
Same here in Salt Lake.
We don't require they be home. We geared up and asked our community for crate donations. So we always give the opportunity when they're in stock in our crate donation closet for fosters to take home a crate with their foster dog as an option. So I think that helps as well, with tips and tricks for that.
Yeah, we don't require that in Los Angeles either.
And we also look at our population and try to best match. If we see someone who's going to be gone consecutively 9 hours on average, and we know this dog has struggled with that type of behavior before, we wouldn't necessarily send that dog to that foster. So we do try to match based off of each individual animal.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thank you. Second question from Michelle. She says, we are a small rescue supporting a small municipal shelter. What are some of the legal and liability obstacles in getting a foster program to a municipal shelter? We would like to be prepared with facts and info and tested practices so that we can present to our city manager and legal to get the ball rolling. Can you speak about challenges and best practices for what we should be looking for to gather proper facts and challenges?
I think that you would, first place, you should start as your local ordinances, reviewing those and seeing if anything is in those regarding fosters.
Yeah, I would say starting with ordinances and making sure that you have a very well thought through foster agreement for all of your foster homes, making sure that that contract is signed and that, you know, based off the ordinances, you have specific things in your foster agreement that is necessary. And also making sure that you're matching the foster animals to the foster homes as best as possible, and knowing, you know, the ordinances.
All right, thank you.
And it's always good to start something like that with offering to do a pilot program. And then once it's successful, then it's really hard for them to say no.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move into our pre-submitted questions. I just put one of them in our published question box here. So what is the best way to follow up with a high volume foster program? And how often should follow-ups be done for healthy animals? Any recommendations for high volume intake facility foster programming would be great.
I would say asking your fosters to follow up with you is the best way to get the follow-ups, because when you are high volume, you don't have the time to reach out to every single person. If you are having that issue that they're not reaching out to you, maybe you know, putting it on a spreadsheet or something that a certain animal is with certain person, so you know to follow up and maybe do that on a weekly basis. But definitely having the fosters know that you expect them to follow up with you.
We communicate in our Facebook group, but well, of course, when they pick up, we give them the expectations of how often we expect to see them. And then during peak time, we offer several vaccination clinics, so people don't have to make appointments. We just have a window on the weekend and evenings for 3 to 4 hours where people can just walk in and get their vaccines, rather than having to try to make an appointment with us.
Yeah, we keep a spreadsheet that's shared among our 2 foster coordinators. We have them divided by species, so we have a dog and a cat. But we ask fosters to check in with us. We let them know when their pet is going to be due for a monthly flea, tick, and heartworm preventative. And we also ask them to send us not only just a monthly check-in, but marketing materials for their foster pet if they're going to be keeping it for that long, because we need their buy-in as well. We need to know that they're helping to get their foster pet adopted. And if not, then we need to kind of re-examine that relationship with them to figure out what the next best step for that pet is going to be, whether they're interested in adopting, and that's why they're not sending check-ins and sending follow-up marketing information. But we kind of put it on them, and then monthly look at, you know, who have we not heard from, who do we need to follow up with and check in with to see how they're doing. And volunteers are a great way to help with that, recruiting someone that can easily make those phone calls for you and fill in that spreadsheet with that simple information.
And for most people, if you have a high volume facility, you probably are using some sort of shelter software. And so there's probably a way to track past due vaccines in your software as well.
Here in SLC, we have a foster magnet that we use and we give it to every foster parent, whether they're taking a cat or a dog, with our foster phone, our email, so that they're kind of responsible for reaching out to us if there's any questions or if they need to return. But we also try to set up a date that they're returning when they pick up the animal. And we use our calendars to really navigate that. And we find that by having that expectation of the pickup and a drop-off return, it makes it a lot easier for us to really manage our animal population. And also, you know, they'll usually email us the night before and say, hey, we're actually thinking about adopting, or we're okay to keep the dog a week longer. And so it just starts the communication when we have those dates kind of in an appointment form already.
All right, thank you. This is another pre-submitted question. What is the best way to stay organized with multiple animals out in short-term foster homes to ensure that nothing falls off the radar?
I think here in Salt Lake, it's pretty similar to how we're managing our communication and how often we're checking in with our foster homes. We usually know when we're sending that animal out to foster what their next steps is, if they're waiting for surgery, if they're up for adoption, like what step they're in. So based off of that, we have them lined up for the next thing. For animals that are up for adoption, that are just going to foster for breaks or to help us with space, we let them know that we want them to come and bring the dog in for adoption twice a week to be seen. And we have a sign up on a calendar so that they can save a kennel space for each day that they're going to bring the dog in. Otherwise, we just know when they're coming to pick up the animal and when they're dropping off.
Yeah, and again, your software should be able to help you with that too.
All right, guys, we have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to do one more pre-submitted question here. Has there been a successful strategy to get bully breeds into short-term foster? Like everyone, potential fosters have to deal with insurance restrictions, which discourage them from fostering a larger/breed restricted dog.
We don't put breeds on any of our dogs.
Yeah, same here in Memphis. We don't breed label, and we advertise ahead of time the dogs that we want to send to foster, and even though we don't breed label, most of the dogs in our shelter here in Memphis are large, stocky, big-headed babies. And so we market ahead of time. We market the heck out of them. Who's going to be eligible? Who wants to go on a Valentine's sleepover with Joe, the dog? And so, I mean, just like you do in any adoption process, shining the best light on them. Don't put any stop signs. I'm not saying this big pit bull wants to go home with you for a night. Just shining the best light on them and a lot of creative marketing. But we don't run into, especially on those shorter term sleepovers that we didn't run into any issues around people not wanting to take home a sleepover dog because we didn't have the breed they wanted, or we only had the breed they didn't want, or any problems with them getting the dog home and having to bring it back due to those things. And we have a very open policy on fostering, so we're not doing home checks and we're not calling your landlord before you take a dog home for a sleepover. So we didn't really run into any challenges around that.
All right, thank you so much. We're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to close this out and say thank you so much to all of our panelists and our moderator, and thank you so much to everyone who attended the webinar. And please look for a recording of this, plus resources, plus responses to the rest of your pre-submitted questions. We will get that to you by end of week. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.